From Sigma Woman, this is the Business for Aligned Women podcast. I'm your host, Clara McKay, your aligned business coach and advocate for all things showing up for your vision. This is a no BS space for brave-hearted women who are actually craving change. I'm dedicated to bringing women's visions into reality, equipping women with all they need to build an abundant future, and shutting down all of the ways that you keep yourself small. Here, we're all about a women-centered approach, non-negotiable value alignment, and making bank without compromising your well-being. Each week, you're already one step closer to your most aligned and abundant future. We have a really interesting episode today coming up with Briana from by.blu Naturopathy. And we're talking all about well-being, health, wellness, taking physical care of ourselves, specifically through the lens of being business owners. We're going to talk about some of her top tips or hacks to look after yourself as a stressed, possibly busy, possibly a little bit overwhelmed business owner. And we're going to get into what it was like working with me and also how we niched down her ideas into what her current business is, so that it really is honing not only her deep interests but her expertise. We're going to be talking about tips specifically for women business owners, rituals all around radiance and skin, and why you should care about your gut health to support how you show up in your business. That is a little bit of a drop the mic thing because we probably don't think about that enough. Briana is Australian, localish. She is so grounded. She's calm, yet very creative, which is a rare mix to have. And she's just such a powerhouse when it comes to not only her beautiful content, but her amazing depth of knowledge. She's incredibly studious, incredibly well-researched. And as someone who has paid a lot of different naturopaths and sought that kind of help quite often, the thing that I really love about Briana is that she is not into the fear-mongering aspect that sometimes can happen with naturopathy. And she's not going to tell you to cut out 70% of your diet. She's going to work with you and gently ease into things. If the suggestions are too much, I know that she would massage things around for you so that it's actually sustainable and doable in your life, and focusing on the things that are going to give the biggest bang for buck. It's really what makes her special and really what makes her stand out in her industry. And I just cannot wait for you to check in with her as we dive into this beautiful, gentle, very educational conversation with Briana. I wanted to let any naturopath students, graduate naturopaths, or new to business naturopaths know that I am putting together something specifically for you. It is going to be a 6-week group foundational aligned business program. It's a coaching program. We'll be coaching as a group with me for new naturopaths. And when I say new naturopath, I mean you're a student in any year, you're a graduate, you're in your first year of running your naturopath business, or you've been running it for a couple of years and it's just not doing what you thought it would do and you hoped it would do. Now, I am running this program and I'm putting it together because naturopathy is quite important to me. It's a system that I have relied on in many different times in my life, and I always come back to, and I always take lifestyle changes and adjustments from it seriously and ongoing. It's a really important and impactful industry and service. And I know that a lot of you don't really know where to start, definitely don't know where to focus in terms of getting your business off the ground. And I would be lying if I didn't say that I frequently see new naturopaths on Instagram doing all of the things that I can see will not actually build a business that's going to make money and be impactful long term and it's really quite easy to fix. And we just need to get you some foundational, simple structures, knowledge, awareness, redirecting your energy and your time and your focus intentionally. And we'll be doing that in this 6-week program. It's going to give you everything that you need to know to get from 0 to 6 figures. It's going to get you everything that you need to know to ensure that your business is set up to reach that amount of income and more within the first couple of years. And it's also just going to give you a lot of confidence in what you're doing, and something that is maybe a little bit less sexy, but my goodness, so incredibly important, is it's going to save you time, energy, and effort that would rather be wasted doing the things that aren't really going to help long term. And that's really going to put a lot of power back in you, putting you back in your driver's seat of your business. And of course, if you have more time, energy, and power and focus, that's just going to have a positive flow and effect, not only to all aspects of your business, but all aspects of your life. So I haven't set the precise date for this, but it will be happening in the second half, the later part of the second half of this year. And I will be ensuring that it's not at a time that clashes with any exams if you're actually still a student, but it will be an affordable group coaching program, and it is just going to skyrocket and support you to set up your business and go full-time in your clinic, and also have passive ways of making money without just relying on money from one-to-one sessions. I can't wait to share it with you. If you are that person and you know you need that and you're ready to really step into doing business in an incredibly aligned and healthy way, jump into the show notes and join the waiting list. It's called Well Business because we're talking about wellness, and we're also talking about, well, we need to talk about how business is going to work. Check it out. Send me a DM if you have any questions, and I can't wait to share it with you. Now let's get into the episode. Let's get into our conversation. Hi, Briana. I'd love for us to get started with you telling me how you got into naturopathy.
Okay, I first heard of naturopathy when I was in my early teens. One of my friends' sisters was studying it, and I didn't really think much of it at the time. But then as I got a bit older, and I grew up as a dancer as well, I was obviously very interested in like keeping myself fit and healthy. And then I saw a naturopath for my own like skin condition. It was a real random skin condition, and she started asking me about like my stress levels and my digestion and all these random things that I'd never really connected the dots with skin being correlated to the inside of you. This was the first time I was like, wait, what's going on here? And then progress a bit further forward, I went through a pattern of disordered eating and some gut health troubles as well. And then I started looking into naturopathy after seeing a naturopath myself, and everything just sort of resonated with me, I guess, and it just all made sense. So as soon as I finished school, studied the degree full time, and then here we are, 1 year in business.
Wow, you went straight into it. I love that.
Yeah.
The name of your business is by.blu Naturopathy. Can you
Yes.
tell us the story of that name?
Yes, my middle name is Lucy, Briana Lucy. When I was younger, when I was born, really, my auntie dubbed me the name Blue, which is like the two condensed. And then I just sort of played around with names and things like that, and it just sort of stuck. And I've thought about changing it a few times, but everyone I ask, they just say no, like it just rolls off the tongue, and it has, yeah, meaning behind it. It's obviously personal to me, and it sort of makes a reference towards how I do things slightly differently to other practitioners, and like my personal brand and wanting to convey that I'm not just a carbon copy of another practitioner, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, and it just sounds good. It sounds exciting. It sounds
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
short and sweet.
Would you mind just for a second going into like how you do things differently?
My practice is quite a combination of both my own lived experience with different health troubles, as well as professional expertise, obviously, and clinical experience. I practice quite evidence-based with supplements, nutritional modifications, all of that. But then I also have this lived experience to understand that you can't just follow a diet that's telling you just cut out all these foods. I feel like it really gives me a lot of empathy for my clients and helps relate to them. And then that flows on to the treatment plans being like quite realistic and attainable for people rather than just expecting the world of people and then them feeling guilty for not being able to follow everything, because I feel like that guilt and shame is just the worst. You can't associate that with good health. Like they're just completely opposites. But yeah.
Especially if stress is an underlying factor in everything that's going on, that's just going to add. And that I've worked with you both as a client and as your client, and it's like night and day. I've seen a lot of naturopaths in my life.
And it's not conducive with health at all, that constant fear. And everything can be demonized in a way, like to broccoli can be demonized.
Well,
Now, if you zoom out and like have perspective on it, it's like, yes, things are good and bad, but in reality, it's a whole food, comes from the earth. Surely it can't be that bad.
yeah, it's crazy. I love that point of difference with you. And I think it's what it will lead to is better results longer term for your clients, because the things you're telling them to do are sustainable and they're able to actually consistently do it.
Totally. It's all well and good to be like, I can make this change for 2 months and stick to it for that long, but there's always an expiry date, and there's no expiry date on your diet and nutrition. It's a lifelong thing. You have to eat to survive. And if you don't have a good relationship with it and it's not sustainable and you don't enjoy it because food is there to be enjoyed, then it's just a recipe for disaster.
100%. We've kind of touched a little bit on your special interest in skin and gut health, which I think is both of those things, but especially skin. Like, I think more so than ever in my lifetime, we're so focused on getting our skin really beautiful, like glassy skin. We've never actually cared about this much. Not just a side note, but I was watching The Hills the other day, like the original The
Yeah.
Hills.
Yeah.
Everyone looks like shit. Like everyone looks so unwell. And
Yeah.
but nowadays we're so hyper focused on being radiant, having clear skin. And as you said, that's linked to gut health. How did you come about that niche of gut and skin, and why is it important to you?
Obviously, like I've mentioned, it's from my own personal experiences to begin with, and just wanting to get a deeper understanding of what's going on, because I just have this passion, like a detective, to want to work out actually what's causing the problem, which I like to do with all of my clients. I don't rest until I feel adequately satisfied that we've found all the answers, or we're at least heading in the right direction. But with skin, I've always had incredibly dry and sensitive skin, and it was always a huge insecurity of mine. And we did a lot of like topical things when I was a child that helped, like alleviated the problem to an extent, but never got rid of the issue. And it wasn't until I started to focus on nutrition and mainly water, like just drinking enough water throughout the day, that I just noticed that my skin was just so much more plump and glowing. And I would get comments from other people. And then I started to, obviously at the same time, I was thinking about doing naturopathy and like just connecting the dots. I was like, this is such an internal job that you need to focus on your internal state to reflect in your external skin quality. And it is spoken about in naturopathy from like a traditional perspective with detoxification pathways. This links into gut health. So if you're not digesting your food properly and evacuating your bowels daily, then you're not detoxifying via those primary emunctories, or like first line detoxification pathways. And then it will present in your skin. If we start to prime up your digestion, improve your gut health, it will then result in better skin quality. And just putting topical things on top of your skin constantly and trying all these new different products and things is quite like an addictive cycle for people in that respect. But if you're not working on the internal drivers, I just made a post the other day about how skin's sort of an iceberg and the topical skincare is the tip of the iceberg, and underneath is your gut health, your hormonal balance, detox pathways, all those sorts of things. If you don't have that covered, topical skincare is only going to do a certain amount. That's the skin side of things. And like I said, it sort of relates into gut health. Since I mentioned before, I went through a period of disordered eating, and then I also went overseas as well. And also just being like a type A personality, I guess, like constantly on the go, very busy. I had all of these gut issues, like really excessive, unpredictable bloating, constipation, changes in bowel motions, which obviously affects your quality of life quite significantly. And it wasn't until I got specific individualized support and did my own microbiome testing that we unpacked that I had bacterial overgrowth, parasitic infection. My like intestinal lining was quite impaired, and had really low beneficial bacteria, that when we treated that underneath another naturopath as well, that I noticed drastic changes in my digestion and gut. And it's just a big passion for me now, because I know firsthand the quality of life aspect. If you have gut issues and there's like fear around going out to eat places because you don't know what's in the food, and then you can't work out what food's causing the symptoms, and it's this whole mental cycle as well. And often they're not serious enough conditions for a modern medical practitioner to be able to do much with, which is not, that's sort of out of their control to an extent, because if you don't have inflammatory bowel disease, you can't take steroids and things for it, if that makes sense. It's often like discounted, which then makes people overthink their symptoms more and feel they're wrong in a way, which just creates this disconnect from their selves, which obviously impacts your quality of life as well. That's why it's a big passion of mine, and wanting to help people just have that better quality of life and radiance, as I always speak about. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
It's crazy hearing you talk about it, because it's really easy to go, oh, she specializes in skin and gut, but actually you're such an in-depth person, and you've really applied that to your business and how you're approaching it as well. It's beautiful to hear that. Most of the people listening to this podcast are either business owners or people who would like to be in the future. Do you have any really go-to tips for them specifically of how they can take care of their well-being while they're juggling so much and so busy?
Yes. And one of these main tips you helped with significantly, and that is finding a schedule that's conducive to your business goals, but also to your health, because you need time to rest. I've had quite big periods of burnout from constantly having things on and being on the go all the time. And then when you stop getting that guilt again about being not putting things into your business, because you are the center of your business and you're constantly having ideas and things, you have to have systems in place to be able to put those ideas, be able to park them for an hour to go and just relax for a bit. And if you're constantly in that fight or flight state, you're churning through all these nutrients and putting a lot of strain on your adrenal glands. Long term, we know that that leads to not adrenal fatigue, but this burnout picture where your body can't keep up with that cortisol level anymore, and you get sick quite often, you're fatigued. If you don't make time for yourself to rest now, your body will choose it for you down the track, which could happen at an inconvenient time, which anytime is inconvenient to be sick or not well. And it can be just like simple non-negotiables throughout your daily routine. Getting outside, make sure you get some sun exposure, particularly in the morning, to help with your circadian rhythm, and prioritizing your nutrition and making it adapt to your lifestyles, prepping your meals in advance if you need, and making sure you're having enough protein, because protein is important for everything. And oftentimes as women, there's this association, if you have protein with every meal, then you're going to turn out like a bodybuilder, which is just incorrect. We need it for our skin and hormones and all of that. And yeah, get some tests ran and get investigated properly and thoroughly if you don't feel quite right, because if you don't feel quite right, you're not going to have all the energy to overflow into your business. You really need to nurture yourself first as priority to then move from there.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And a lot of people I work with are just so beautifully creative, like yourself. But in order for those ideas to eventuate in anything, you need follow through. And in order to follow through, you need energy. And if you don't have energy, it's just going to be ideas, which really could also just be called anxiety. Ideas that are never kind of actioned is just anxiety and overthinking, right? But I would love for you to go back to, you said that when you're in fight and flight all the time, you're churning through nutrients. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. When you're in that sympathetic nervous system state, you're activated. You have two sides to your nervous system, parasympathetic and sympathetic. When you're stressed, it doesn't matter whether it's like a stressful email or whether you're like creatively engaged and stimulated or whether you're being chased by a tiger, your body can't tell the difference. It has a similar,
Yeah.
it has the same response. So your adrenal glands get activated and they produce hormones such as cortisol, like a stress hormone. And this takes blood flow away from our digestive organs, for example, because it's prioritizing blood to our muscles so that we can run from a tiger. We can't digest and absorb our food properly when we're in that state. For one, we're not getting the nutrients we need. We can be eating all the right foods, but if we're not absorbing the nutrients, then that we're still going to have the same issue. And then your adrenal glands, when they're activated, they need nutrients to actually do the molecular conversion to produce cortisol. It's not just produced from thin air. For example, vitamin C, B vitamins, protein, healthy fats, like all have a role in helping produce cortisol. And obviously, we don't want to, ideally, we'd like to remove the source of stress. It's important to favor that parasympathetic nervous system state regularly, that our body's not constantly in that state and churning through cortisol and all of those nutrients. Because, for example, B vitamins, they're really important for mitochondrial functioning. That helps with energy production, cognition, all those sorts of things. We want to be prioritizing our mitochondrial health rather than constantly producing cortisol. And then, like I touched on before, if you're constantly producing cortisol, your adrenal glands are working all of the time. And obviously, it makes sense. They don't have an infinite supply of energy and nutrients. We need to take time to really restore them. And herbal medicines can be really good for helping us adapt to stress, like licorice root, Romania, rhodiola. But again, getting into that parasympathetic state is always of preference because, yeah, we need to actually remove the cause of the stress, which can be just balanced with activating that parasympathetic nervous system regularly.
Yes, definitely. Is there anything else that you would say about mitigating stress, particularly?
Yeah, being aware of where your stress is coming from and just it starts with just awareness of how you're actually feeling in your body, because you can become just on things external to you that you're just disconnected from your actual body. Prioritizing movement, whether it's a walk outside in the morning, whether it's Pilates, going to the gym, whatever you enjoy and get enjoyment from, can really help with like connecting to your physical body and becoming aware of how things feel. And when you're actually in that stressed sympathetic state, whether you get slightly elevated heart rate, which if you wear like an Apple Watch or something like that can help, or yeah, things like that can help. But yeah, and if you're getting indigestion, you feel like your food's just sitting in your stomach and you're not digesting things properly, that could be a flag. And if you're not, yeah, just being present in your day to day, it's important to first become aware and then where those stresses are coming from. And like we talk about in coaching, I find it really helpful to look through your calendar and work out where you feel the best and what activities, jobs, etc., maybe actually just sapping your energy and adding to your stress, when you want to first becoming aware of the stresses and modifying them if possible. But then, like I touched on before, just making sure you're having all the nutrients through both your food and supplements if required, as well as herbal medicines, which obviously I would advise speaking to a practitioner about. They can look at the quality of the supplements because there is so much available these days and they're not all created equal. You need to make sure that you have the right dosages, the right forms of nutrients, and yeah, good quality supplements, which is often masked by really good marketing. That's another tip as well.
Mhm. Do you personally have any naturopath backed tips or hacks that you really lean on often for that vibrancy and radiance that you talk about?
I've got a few foundational, non-negotiable things that everyone should be doing. Having enough water, aiming for 2 to 3 liters per day, but also being aware of where you're getting electrolytes, because you need, for example, salt to actually absorb the water into your cells through that osmotic regulation. And people they often fear salt, like particularly with all the low salt craze and being told that it will, give you cardiovascular disease, but it will really actually, it's beneficial. Of course, in highly ultra processed foods, it's quite hidden and in very large amounts. But if you put a pinch of like Celtic sea salt into your water, like that's nowhere near that level and will really help with the actual absorption. And plus with your adrenals, like that can mess with your electrolytes a little bit, making sure you're having enough salt, but also things like magnesium, potassium. Coconut water can be a good addition as well. That's one thing, being well hydrated, and obviously that will impact your skin. And also having your coffee after food, because if we have coffee on an empty stomach, that will, because it is quite acidic, it can damage the lining of the stomach, but also it triggers that cortisol release. We're already stressed and producing a lot of cortisol. Coffee is just going to heighten this, and having a really nourishing, protein-rich meal before having your coffee can really help with minimizing that impact on your cortisol levels. And having protein with every meal, like I mentioned before, individualized, high quality supplements, not just random supplements, because it may not work.
Yeah, the protein thing is definitely something that probably everyone kind of waxes and wanes in their commitment to it. And even recently, I've been very like eating lots of carbs because I'm just being lazy.
Yeah.
And it's such a dramatic difference. Like I went for a while there where I was really hitting 120 grams a day,
Yeah.
and my energy levels were just so much higher, much more regulated and
Yes.
consistent, and you just ate much. One thing for listeners to know about that is if they've never done that before, they've never actually focused on protein, they probably have no conception of how much better they could feel.
Yes. If you haven't experienced it, you don't know how.
It's hard to make the jump if you've never felt that way. But if you don't feel good and you're not focused on protein, I think that's a really big one to try, because you're going to be eating anyway. It's just a little shift in the things that you're eating, and it's probably an add-in rather than a takeaway, and
Exactly.
it's gonna make such a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just has this beautiful, like focusing on your energy, especially for women business owners, has such a beautiful flow on effect with you'll be able to show up more, you'll be more consistent, you'll produce more. So you start ticking things off and creating that feeling of accomplishment within yourself, which then you don't feel like you need to get external validation as much, and it develops self-confidence and self-worth, which then you just do more and more and more. Whereas if somewhere along that cycle you're dropping off, that's where we get in these really long-term habits of overthinking and self-sabotage. It might seem silly to go, well, eating more protein is going to benefit your business and your finances, but it actually does and can.
Yeah, exactly. It all starts with you and how much you actually have to offer. If you're depleted, then your business is going to be depleted as well.
Yeah, and then you don't achieve what you wanted to, and then you start feeling bad about yourself, and then it's just like this
Yes.
whole vicious cycle that I see way, way, way too often.
Yeah.
The last couple of questions. You and I did Align Business Intensive 10 weeks earlier this year. I'd love for you to reflect on what that process was like, and also if you have any wise words for anyone who's like on the fence about doing coaching.
Like I mentioned before, the schedule and aligning my business as well with my own personal values was just this whole energetic shift in the whole way that I approach my business, because it does really start with your mindset from the beginning. And if you're operating from a place of everyone else knows better than me, and it's so easy, especially in the health space, like someone else is always going to have a lot of knowledge in comparison to me, and you'll never know everything. It's unrealistic to expect that, and it shouldn't hold you back from actually taking action. Setting up a schedule and treating myself as my own boss rather than favoring like other people as a dominating person over me.
Letting other people's priorities or ideas take over
Yes.
your focus.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also being selective about who gives you feedback and what feedback you take on, because if you get criticism from someone, you can take it constructively, and you don't always have to take it on board and
Oh.
use that in future action. That's just their personal opinion. Everyone's entitled to an opinion, but it's not necessarily relevant to what you're doing and where you want to go. All that sort of mental shift has been really empowering, I guess. And it's just sort of like lifted this weight and helped me actually plan what I'm doing with through my weeks, which then again allows me to have more time out, more time to rest and actually look after my own health to then give more to my business. And then also having a longer term plan, which I'd never had before. I was really foggy, I guess, with a lot of ideas, not exactly sure how to actually put them into practice, because it's all well and good to have these lofty goals, but if you can't break it down into actionable steps that you can actually put into your days and weeks and months, then you're actually not going to get there. And that would be the main reason I would recommend someone to just invest in coaching, because if you don't, you'll likely just be in the same spot that you are now in 12 months' time, and the cycle will continue. There's nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Do you feel like having the long-term plan and having a schedule, how has that impacted your nervous system and stress levels?
Like significantly, like I'm not even joking, like an overnight shift, because I would constantly get to the end of the day and be like, oh, but I still haven't done this, I still haven't done that. And then I'd be on my laptop until like 9 p.m. at night. And obviously I know from my work, you shouldn't be exposing yourself to screens that late, let alone the stress and like the just mental activation. Just overnight being like, okay, that task will be done here, and inserting it in the relevant time blocks that have been planned out ahead of time is just so beneficial to your nervous system and health. But yeah, it just lifts.
It does, doesn't it? And the more that people get into their business and start getting business acumen and start learning about business, the more that you will realize that there is millions of tasks you could do, and there is millions of things that you could try and probably should be doing and trying. And it's just not possible for, especially if you're just a one-person team, for you to fit that into your week or your month. We have to get used to ending our workday and having space somewhere where we know it's being captured, we know it's on a list, we know it's going to happen, but it's not in the back of our mind something that we have to jump onto. You can't just be running by those to-do lists every day or feeling stressed. You really need to go, well, that's a next Tuesday thing. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Like,
You then.
not going to have it rattling around in my head again. All right. Last little thing. Is there an offer that you've got at the moment, or maybe that's coming in the future, that you think is the best place for people to start with, to start working with you and sorting out their gut health and their skin health and then their confidence and their stress levels and all of the things that come with it?
Yeah, definitely. I've just launched the Radiant Skin Manual, which is a 59-page ebook, soon to be able to be available hard copy as well. That really just gives you the foundations of skin health and things that I will repeat over and over in clinic to my skin clients about the things that you just can't negotiate. You have to be doing them to be able to influence your skin health. But then it's also a manual. So it's broken down into relevant skin conditions like acne, eczema, dermatitis, rosacea, psoriasis, and the relevant tweaks and changes you can make from today in your daily life to have long-term lasting impact. And also it just gives you insight into the way that I approach my work and nutrition and all of the things like that, and health as well. And from there, you can book with me for one-to-one support, one-on-one sessions, online or in person in Warrnambool.
And if people want that in-depth testing that happens in the one-to-one, they start working with you guys will chat about what they need, and then you'll get those tests organized and work through them with them.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time and energy and effort today, Briana. It was lovely to connect.
Thank you for having me.
If you can't tell, getting to share this time with you is something that I find truly sacred. I know that you're busy, but if you've taken anything away from our time spent together today, could you extend the love and share this episode with a friend, your community, or on your socials? Tag me so that I can see it and I can share it too. Or when you have a spare moment, leave the podcast a review. These things cost you nothing and will mean so much to me. Let's get this resource into the hands of more women visionaries and help us collectively move towards our most aligned way of being and doing business together.